everyone, this is Eve Picker, and if you listen to this podcast series, you're going to learn how to make some change. Hi there, thanks so much for joining me today for the latest episode of Impact Real Estate Investing. My guest today is Majora Carter, and wow, you won't want to miss this. It's hard to know where to begin describing Majora, who is quite simply put, a powerhouse. Described as an urban revitalization strategist, her career has spanned environment, economy, social mobility, and real estate development, and her work has won major awards in each sector, including a MacArthur Genius Grant, a Peabody Award, the Rudy Bruner Award Silver Medal, and 9 honorary doctorates, amongst many, many more. Majora is quoted on the walls of the Smithsonian Museum of African American History and Culture as saying, "Nobody should have to move out of their neighborhood to live in a better one." There is no way around it. If you are really interested in impact investing, this podcast is a must listen. Be sure to go to evepicker.com to find out more about Majora on the show notes page for this episode. And be sure to sign up for my newsletter so you can access information about impact real estate investing and get the latest news about the exciting projects on my crowdfunding platform, Small Change. Good morning, Majora. I'm so delighted that you're on this show with me.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So, I was reading a little background on you, and the thing that stood out to me is this quote: "Nobody should have to move out of their neighborhood to live in a better one." And these are your words, and they can be found on the walls of the Smithsonian Museum of African American History and Culture. And I just wonder how these words play into your work.
Oh, those words were actually not my words, but they've certainly been attributed to me. They were the words of a woman who worked with me at Marta Rodriguez as a organizer when I ran Sustainable South Bronx. And it really embodied exactly what we were trying to do, at the time when I was running a small environmental and economic development organization, which is, this is our community. How are we not creating the kind of community of our dreams here? And it really continues on as we're thinking about real estate development and how do you use real estate development to truly transform your community into something that you can age into and stay there because you feel as though everything that you need and want is actually a part of it.
Yeah. So are you still working mostly in the South Bronx?
No, I work nationally. I certainly do have some projects that I'd love to get off the ground here in the South Bronx and some that we're working on, but we actually work nationally as well. We've got a really amazing real estate development project, mixed income housing, mixed use development going on out in Mapleton Fall Creek, Indianapolis, which I'm absolutely delighted about. It'll be about 50 units of homeownership, another 150 units of mixed income housing, and about 50,000 square feet specifically for light manufacturing, commercial, and cultural space. And we're delighted to be the developer on it.
Wow. So you weren't a developer when you started out, right?
Oh, no. Although, interestingly enough, I've been developing a lot longer than I actually gave myself credit for. I was a card-carrying member of the nonprofit industrial complex and moved out of my neighborhood or left my neighborhood for college and didn't really want to come back because it's really like America's low status community, one of America's low status community. And I want to just articulate what I mean by low status. We don't generally use disadvantaged or low income to describe the communities that we want to work in most, but low status are the kind of communities where there are, more liquor stores and corner stores than there are, opportunities for good, affordable, different diverse options for food. You'll find, instead of banks or credit unions, you'll find payday loan places and check cashing stores. You'll find the kind of places where there's an enormous amount of very highly subsidized affordable housing and, very little, economic range between. But essentially in those areas, inequality is assumed both inside and outside the community. Like these are the places where if you're a bright, talented kid, you are taught to measure your success by how far you get away from those communities. We don't have a way to think about retaining talent in those neighborhoods. So when I was growing up in the South Bronx, I was one of those bright kids who was definitely told you were going to grow up and be somebody, which meant you get out of the neighborhood. And I embraced it hook, line, and sinker. And only when I came back to the neighborhood and realized that the way our communities were being used by a real estate, in particular for us, it was environmental burdens that just kept getting heaped upon us. I also started realizing that we could use real estate as a way to transform our communities to benefit us. And that's when, so I first started in park development and riverfront restoration, green jobs training and placement, and literally just moved into real estate development when I realized that it seemed to me like a very natural trajectory to go at scale in terms of creating the kind of community that you really felt you didn't have to move out of in order to live in a better one. And so my first development project was literally squatting a building across the street from the house that my parents lived in and I was born and raised in. And and it was a crazy kind of story because it kind of technically had been in my family for decades at that point. The woman who owned it died 20 years before I decided to move in, and no one in her family wanted the house.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it was like, I'd moved back in and I'm like, I want to set some roots down. And what did I do? I moved in there, took over all the bills, the taxes and everything. That's when predatory speculators obtained a fraudulent deed for my house, just as I was in the process of trying to purchase it and finding, and getting title. And it was a crazy, crazy story. So there I was acting as a owner, landlord for years at that point. And it was a wonderful, just crazy opportunity to realize that no, I am actually developing this space and preserving affordable housing in my own community and generating wealth for myself. Because it's like, look, we're losing that. And I wasn't thinking about, the wealth gap or anything like that. I just needed a place to live. And I wanted, the people who were living in my building to continue to have a place to live. But I was a developer back then and
Right.
I'm a developer now.
Right. So, that's really interesting to me because I've been lots of places lately where developer is just a bad word.
Oh, it still is. Oh my gosh.
No, it's getting worse, I think, not just still. But the question is, we know that just like there's good doctors and there's bad doctors, there's good developers and there's bad developers, but the narrative is really all developers are bad.
Right.
So,
and there's no space in it for those of us who are trying to use development for what it actually could be, which is a truly transformative way to support communities that we love. And we really think about how do you use it as a tool specifically to support the visions and the values that we have, which is, that writ large, no one should have to move out of their neighborhood to live in a better one. You should have opportunities, to live, work, and play in wonderful ways, in ways that match your income. But there's all sorts of opportunities for you to engage, in a beautiful community that actually does not require money, but builds community, and through open space. And why is it that in low status areas, and whether it's an inner city community like the South Bronx or a Native American reservation or, a former, coal mining town, that has no real jobs anymore, but it's all white. Like, why do we think of those, developing in those places where it's only two kinds of development, where it's either the poor folks that are there are either generally bought out or displaced by people with higher incomes, that typical gentrification kind of phenomena, or it's poverty level economic maintenance, which is still real estate development, wherein there's lots
of the same.
Yes, basically. Yeah. And the whole idea is that why are there only two kinds of development that happen in low status communities? Why can't we use it as a way to increase economic diversity and to build wealth creation and just make it so that people love their neighborhoods as opposed to feeling like they've got to move out of them in order to live a little bit better? And I accept that challenge. And I really believe that that's what I'm doing. So yeah, I mean, as a developer and as a Black woman developer, who's working, in this really interesting way where there is no way I would ever build an exclusively affordable housing complex for the lowest.
I'm so glad you said that.
Ever. And I've been in some circles within the nonprofit industrial complex demonized for that. And because like I should, be doing the kind of things, where it's like all for the people. I'm like, poor communities concentrate, low status communities concentrate poverty and all of the issues that are associated with it: low health outcomes, poor educational attainment, higher rates of being involved in the justice system or being touched by it in some way, and your family, obviously higher rates of unemployment and poverty, and just creating a sense of lack of hope within those communities. Like, so why would I want to build more of that?
Yeah.
Unless, of course, you're getting big developer fees and you really don't care about the communities that you're working in, which is why I understand why most people hate developers so much.
Be sure to go to evepicker.com and sign up for my free educational newsletter about impact real estate investing. You'll be among the first to hear about new projects you can invest in. That's evepicker.com. Thanks so much. Yeah, no, I get it too. But I'm really fascinated by what you're saying, and I totally agree with it. I've watched for years in Pittsburgh the affordable housing products sort of litter neighborhoods that all start looking the same. This cookie cutter affordable housing product. And it doesn't, while, definitely people need decent places to live and it accomplishes that, it doesn't change the nature of what's happening in those neighborhoods.
Yeah.
The moment you kind of push that edge of that, that's when, I don't know, how do you stop speculators? It's something I think about a lot.
Well, we try to, and are still trying a number of things. I mean, one of them is continue talking about the approach that we've taken with our own real estate development and actually, putting our own money where our mouth is. So as developers, we did spend a lot of time within our own community, just really understanding what are some of the hopes and dreams and aspirations and of course needs within the community. We did hundreds and hundreds of surveys, realized that what people in a neighborhood like the South Bronx, which is one of the poorest parts of the country within congressional districts, are the kind of the same thing that anybody in a middle class community wants. They want great places to work, housing that quality housing that matches their income. They want places where they could afford to buy things that they need. They want lifestyle infrastructure like cafes and coffee shops and bars and things of that nature. They want those kind of things so they can feel like a sense of value within that is inherent within their own community that goes back to them. But what happens within low status communities a lot, because of course real estate developers, they take the kind of 20, 30-year long-term view of what's happening in terms of how communities are going to plan. Whereas in our communities, we're taught that there's no real value in them. So it's easy, I think, for them if your family owned a home during a time of severe financial disinvestment in America, like the way that my family, my dad bought the house I was born and raised in the 1940s. By the time the 60s and the 70s rolled around, there was so much white flight and disinvestment within the community, and arson, because landlords were torching the buildings there because there was no financial investment coming in. So the most they could do was get insurance money. I mean, it was a really bad kind of space, but that kind of like lingering understanding, this is what our community is. Of course, if you own property, it's going to have an impact on you, and you're going to feel like, the second you can move, you're going to get out. And predatory speculators understand that. So they're counting on us not knowing the value of our own home. And I can't tell you how many little notes I get under my door phone. They found my cell phone, and they're like telling me they can buy, my house for cash and close within a week. Like, this is a common occurrence.
Wow.
And for folks that don't understand what they have, guess what? They're going to be like, you want to pay me what for this crap that I'm living in right now? And so they end up selling actually generally for less than what the house is worth because they just don't know. And and then the predatory speculator makes out really well. So, but since there isn't a whole lot from what I've seen within the nonprofit industrial complex and communities like this, that's actually going to support homeowners within a community, which I think home ownership is actually often, especially in areas where there's a rental unit in them, there's very little support to support those folks. Like there's nonprofits or government. It's like they're like, oh, we're going to focus, on the poorest people in those communities. And, anybody else is like sucks to be them, because it's almost like they're invisible. And what we've actually been doing on our own is trying to identify what are those, first of all, some of the homeowners, and just like letting them know it's like you're sitting on your family's legacy. Like you should be using this to help create wealth and retain it within your own family. Or, or if you want to sell, like at least understand what you got so that you're not being reamed for it. And the other thing is, so we've actually hosted things like small, 0% interest loan workshops and low interest loan workshops. And specifically on our own dime, just so that folks have an understanding of what that is. And on another level, and it's funny because this is, again, on my own time, because we don't have funding to do this. It's just that we saw that it was a need. We're really hoping that we are going to be able to convince somebody or other to develop some kind of a fund that supports low-income homeowners in low-status communities. So it's kind of like, there's like that cooling off period if you change and get insurance, or, you buy a house or whatever, and you've got a little bit of time where you've got to prove that this is what you want. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't that be kind of great that before any kind of real estate transaction goes down in a neighborhood like this, that there's actually folks just making sure that folks understand what their options are?
That would be great. What would the fund ideally do? It
would, number one, support folks to actually be in that role, to play that kind of advisor role to the folks, to let them know what their options are. But also, we find that some folks are selling their homes
because they cannot repair the roof.
Yeah.
I know.
One little thing. And it's just like...
So a neighborhood fund for people who really need help to keep them in their homes. I thought Philadelphia was doing a program like that.
New York is definitely not. New York City, at least, is really sad how little they think about.
I think there are ways to do a fund like that. Do you think there are people in the neighborhood that would contribute to a fund like that themselves in their own neighborhood?
I'm not sure about that. I mean, I think it's something that frankly should be a part of city government. I really do, because I feel like they watch, the tax rolls, in communities like ours. And it does fall along racial lines as well. Like nobody pays attention, in poor communities of color to supporting the home ownership rate here. It's not in our government. There are nonprofits, a few nonprofits that work on, none in the area that I'm in, actually, which is why we've been hosting those type of meetings and bringing those resources in. It's really challenging. And another thing that we're working on is literally building our own projects to prove this talent retention strategy that we have. Is like, if you build a kind of community that makes people feel like they don't have to move out of it in order to live in a better one, but you've got to build it. Like, so one of the things that we saw in all of our research and the market research that we did here was that people were leaving the community, across income levels, not because they thought the neighborhood was dangerous or anything like that. It was because there was no real lifestyle infrastructure here. There was no place to get a drink. If you're an adult, that wasn't a topless bar. There wasn't a coffee shop or, a bookstore, any things like that. Even like the kind of cute stores that people want to go to, or a place to get dinner. There's plenty of greasy spoon places and of course, fast food chains, etc. But nothing that actually spelled quality in any real way, and no attractive third spaces that made people want to stick around, like a coffee shop with Wi-Fi. And so we actually were able to acquire the lease to very inexpensive lease on the main street in our community, and which was a wonderful deal that we got long term. And so we were just like, this is great. So we looked actually for a coffee shop operator for years.
For years?
Oh yeah, literally. We had that lease for a while. And basically it was clear because it looked like the market here, wouldn't appreciate anything like this, even though we knew that our data would proved otherwise, because we knew people were leaving the community to experience things like that.
I know what happened. You started it yourself, right?
Exactly. And it's like, I was never planning to be a barista. And unfortunately,
so many developers who've done that in areas where, no one sees the market potential, because, our financial institutions, I sound like a little bit like a broken record because there's lots of reasons to say this. Financial institutions really are crushing the innovation out of cities.
Yes.
They're really just financing cookie cutter projects.
Right.
So the moment you do something different, I mean, I get it. They have regulators.
Yep.
Shouldn't someone step up?
Yes. And you know what? What was wonderful is that in our example, so we decided to open, we first started, it was a joint venture with a really amazing coffee shop and roaster downtown. They'd never had a Bronx presence and was kind of interested in the idea called Birch Coffee. And so we partnered with them for almost a year. First, it took 6 months just to understand the business. And then we actually opened in the latter half of the year. And we learned everything from them about how to actually operate a coffee shop and train people and all that stuff. And it was amazing. It really was their guidance. I'm so grateful. But it was sort of clear that the market up here was a little different than this very, high-end coffee shop downtown where there were no flavors or whipped cream and, syrups and people. That's what, frankly, people kind of wanted up here. We also wanted to provide healthy options as well, but we had, in order to stay in business, we actually had to respond to the market. So we actually... Yeah.
They wanted over the top luxury, right?
Yes. And it's just like, no. It's like, I know expertly steamed milk is beautiful on its own, but if somebody wants whipped cream on top of it, I'm going to give it to them.
Yeah.
It was just that simple.
That's a Viennese, right? So there's the thing.
We should start calling it that now. You're totally right.
Yeah. They're all over call it the Viennese.
That was so interesting is that but it also gave us an opportunity to kind of stick our own swagger on it, quite frankly. Because this is the South Bronx. It is the birthplace of hip hop. We are all about innovation. And so we were like, we need this cafe to pay homage to that. And so we ended up moving it to a larger space. And then we actually hired 2 hip hop historians to actually help us curate, the actual wallpaper, which is literally the early days of hip hop, mostly Bronx based. And, we just built this, it's like an homage to graffiti, and it's just beautiful. And we use it as this tremendous third space for open mics and art shows. And it's just really this beautiful community gathering spot. And it did take us a while to get to that point at a place where, we won't be losing money soon, which is awesome. But what was fascinating about it was the fact that early on, we literally ran out of money to do it because we were not anticipating, we first time coffee shop owners not knowing anything.
That's very tough study.
Yeah. So one of the members of the advisory board that we have that was literally giving us intel about how to do our projects better. Actually, they volunteered to invest. Her family volunteered to invest in our project.
Isn't that great?
And it was just like, and what was amazing was that, we didn't talk about it. I mean, we did. We socialize a lot of things, and it's a small community. But what was interesting is that the way people found out that another family in the community had invested in this business was just like, wait, we can do that? Like, I'll never forget some of the conversation we had about it. It was just so beautiful that it was because people just did not realize that this was like within their grasp.
Yeah.
And so for our next project, we acquired
I think you should be the spokesperson for small change. I mean, that's really what my hope is for it, that people can invest in the way big investors can invest, and they can get the same return because, hey, it's money, right? Why should they get less someone else anyway? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Powerful place.
Very powerful.
Just to even know that you can add value. Literally, you are adding the value to make this project grow. It was really amazing. And so our next project, we acquired a rail station, a former rail station, It was designed by the same architect that did the Woolworth building and the U.S. Supreme Court building. His name's Cass Gilbert. And of course, I'm sure you know that. But so I own a little piece of Cass Gilbert, like, woohoo! It just makes me very happy. It really does. And so it's only about 4,000 square feet. And our goal is to transform that into a restaurant incubator or a food hub for local chefs. Because it's interestingly enough, the Bronx has some tremendous culinary talent that comes out.
Sure, it does. Yeah.
There's this one group called Ghetto Gastro. It's like, 4 young men from the Bronx. One of them I mentored many years ago, which I'm so proud of. And now they're like these ridiculous caterers that are flown all over the world to do their version. But haute couture that's a fashion term. That's not a food term. What's like nouvelle cuisine, except they put their like spin on it because, they're like these wonderful boys from the hood, but they're all like trained chefs. It's unbelievable, like what they do. And it's just extraordinary. Ghetto Gastro. You should look it up.
I'm going to look at it.
And so there are folks like that literally come from our communities, but then kind of like parachute out because there aren't many opportunities for them to open up businesses here. And I'm like, how cool would it be if we had this restaurant?
Yeah, that'd be awesome. We have an incubator like that in Pittsburgh that's done very well. I think they've got 3 stations and they have like rotating startups in there. And then
because the restaurant incubatees, all they do, they cook. Like in our version, we would manage the bar and the dining area, and each one of the restaurateurs, either 3 or 4, depending on what we can fit, is literally what they would, instead of rent, we would get a gross percentage of sales.
Right.
So they're not they get a chance to really hone their craft and focus on building their market. And then, but
what's the holdup? Why can't you get that off the ground?
We're in a neighborhood that's not, because you could read lots of real estate development articles about the South Bronx and how it's like the next, it's like the next extension of Manhattan and it's booming. And there's a lot of market rate development going on and a lot of commercial things happening in it. But that's the part of the South Bronx where that's happening. There are other part of the South Bronx, which is where I'm and born and raised and still live. That's the part that's sort of being reserved for poverty level economic maintenance.
That's shocking.
No, just, yup. Like there is one big project that's coming up here that's about, it's another low income housing project. It's like it's so crystal clear that all that's happening is they're trying to concentrate more and more poverty, here. And so I think that's one of the reasons why it's kind of like, well, that's what happens here. So you can't really think about investing in it. And also it seems like it might be considered like almost too small a project for some folks as well, because
how many square feet is it?
It's only 4,000 square feet.
Oh, that's big enough.
That's about with all the added rooms. We actually just, interestingly enough, discovered a basement. It was like literally. It was like when they found the other room up top. We discovered another basement. So that could be the speakeasy. Yeah, and that to redevelop, a 5,000 square foot space, it's almost as the brain damage is about the same as a 50,000 square foot space, but the returns are much higher for the 50,000 square foot space, and so I think that's also part of it as well.
Yes, but the return on this would be phenomenal for that neighborhood. Like it's really the triple bottom line return that really we're talking about here. And I don't know, I think there would be people who would invest. I really do. You're telling an amazing story, and I want to come see the building.
Okay.
And I want to eat with Ghetto Gastro. And
I know. Oh my gosh, who knows where they are right now?
Because the neighborhood sounds amazing, and I want to cry when I hear about more and more affordable housing being built.
I know. And it's just like, I know whenever I say that, I have to like preface it with, please don't think that, Majora Carter hates poor people, because I think that's the way that folks immediately goes like, oh, she doesn't want any more affordable housing. It's like, I do want more affordable housing. I want affordable housing for a range of incomes, because we know that economic diversity means economic stability and community stability, whereas the concentration of poverty is exactly opposite that. But again, if we've been led to believe that this is all that happens in low status communities, we start to believe it. And then we feel that the only option is to leave, if we have an opportunity to do so. And who does that benefit? It benefits the predatory speculators and the government programs, who take advantage of the fact that there are really poor people in our communities that probably have lifestyle-related illnesses, low educational attainment, or who will probably be within the justice system, who, they make money for somebody, not for the people that are here. I mean, it just seems like such a tragically obvious thing that we see happening over and over and over again. And since we're led to believe that there's no real value in our communities, we internalize it.
Yes. A lot of this is about educating community, right?
Yeah.
What community engagement tools do you think work best?
Honestly, opening our coffee shop and having a presence and being there has been so transformative. Like my husband and I both work there and work out of it a lot. And we've met, and I thought I knew a lot of people in my own neighborhood, but I have met so many more as a result of having that space, opening it up in a way that is just, it's not a community center that people feel like they've got to tiptoe in, or have a problem to be in. No, this is a place of joy and access. And it was I'll give you an example of how I knew that we were really something that our community appreciated. Because, again, the idea, because I mentioned before that some folks some folks within the social justice industrial complex totally demonize me and think that I'm like, bringing in developers, to kick out poor people. I mean, some of the stuff is just insane. And they won't acknowledge that I'm actually a developer. It's like, no, I'm the developer. Like, I want to be called a developer. I'm not, and I have my own ideas. I don't want to talk to these guys. So we were hosting a workshop for small business owners and in the community, as well as homeowners, to get access to capital for 0% interest loans and low interest loans, and also figure out other ways that there was going to be a presentation on how to make your building, add additional units on top of your building to see if this is something even you can do. So we were protested. So we had 40 people inside the space waiting to hear more about this, what like the 0% interest loans and like how do you make your actual building work for you. And so there were like 10, 15 people outside yelling and about how I was destroying the neighborhood and with bringing a coffee shop there.
Really?
Yeah. And I have to tell you, the signs were huge. They were saying Majora Carter destroys the South Bronx one coffee at a time. And I'm a community destroyer. I mean, it was just like, but some of you people know me. It could have just like literally knocked on my door and said, hey, can we talk? But they wouldn't do that. But I have to say, after that, I'm like, oh my God, my whole neighborhood is seeing people yelling with my name on a sign, talking about how evil I am.
Yeah.
And I was just like, we might have to close this stupid coffee shop. I mean, who's going to want to come? The next day, we had the best day ever.
Oh, that's really great.
Best day ever. With people coming in like one after another. And it was like, you know what? I actually never even been here before, but I saw that and I thought that was stupid. And I'm going to buy a cup of coffee just to support you. And I was just like,
that's really lovely. That's really lovely. Yeah.
Yes. So,
yes, it is. So, many people just fear change, right?
Yes, and I get it. And I understand. But that's like, to your point, it is, if we fear what we don't know, but if we don't actually look at, because real estate developments, like, that Bishop Desmond Tutu quote, a knife's a knife. You could either use it to cut a hole in somebody or to cut a slice of bread and feed it to your child. And it's a tool. We can use it for horrible things or we can use it for great stuff. But it is what it is. But how we use it, and unless we're empowering ourselves and other folks who are actually looking at, at places that actually have that triple bottom line and going, that's valuable. Maybe I won't make the kind of returns. Because I'm sure, because my rail station, one of the reasons why it's also empty is because I've been very choosy. Like, I am not going to open it up to another health clinic or like a tax prep place that's closed. No, we've said no to folks like that.
Yeah.
No. So, yeah.
So have I. So you're making me feel stronger.
Good. No, I don't mind at all.
I said no to a tax prep space. I couldn't bring myself to sign the lease. I just couldn't do it.
They have so much money. And they don't even have to be open. It's really crazy.
No, they don't have to be open. That's the really bad thing. What a horrible thing to do at a neighborhood. Just have a place that's open for 3 months and then a shuttered storefront.
Exactly. So it's like, no.
Anyway, now we've said what we think. Just like there's been a wave of greenwashing in this country, I feel like there's a wave of good washing. People are talking about impact investing.
I hope so.
But when I hear you, I really wonder if they're really impact investing.
Nope.
What do you think the future holds for impact investing? What do you have to do to change that?
I mean, I am actually hopeful about, some of the smaller scale investment platforms that are out there and just crowdfunding in general for real estate. I'm still learning about it. I do feel like our communities in our country as a whole is really only going to be changed when we start seeing each other in ways that we want to support. Look, I'm a woman of faith, so I think I actually really do believe that we can create a kind of heaven on earth if we're really good at it. But I also think that I am hopeful that people are really tired of expecting the status quo, because by all accounts, I've got great vision. I have no balance sheet, so I don't look good to anybody, and I get that. But I have a track record of getting things done. And
no, you don't look good to very traditional financial.
No, I look miserable.
You look great to other people. So,
and those are the people that I'm hoping will go like, oh wait, but in order to continue to do that great work, she needs something that's a little bit different from what she was getting before. That's what I'm hoping. Because I also love the idea of people really taking ownership. And I think that's been one of the reasons why our low status communities in America feel so disjointed and so destabilized, is because we don't have a way to really keep and retain roots in those areas, whether it's access to capital, or predatory speculation. It's all up in there,
But it's really hard to get a neighborhood to focus when it has its more than its fair share of single parents and people with 2 or 3 jobs.
Those are the people that want more. I mean, and you know what? Yeah. And believe me, not to poo-poo it at all. Yes, there are those who are not going to get out of their heads at all. But then there's those who are just like, you know what? Why can't I have it? And there's always a critical mass of folks who are just literally waiting for something to do. Like, frankly, the folks who saw me being bullied with this protest and who were just like, no, wait, I see that. I know what I can do. So you may think that just buying a cup of coffee, a specialty cup of coffee, might not be an act of rebellion or resistance, but I absolutely looked at it like it was.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think there's more of that's just waiting for a reason to be there, to actually stand up and be counted, and maybe even count a little bit of their own dollars to say, you know what, yeah, I believe in it. I believe in it so much that I'm going to invest in it.
So that's what we've got to make happen at the train station, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I'm gonna ask 3 sign-off questions that I ask of everyone, because I think I've taken up enough of your time. Keep talking to you all day long.
I know. I love it. I got to get there.
I think I know the answer to this, but we may as well reiterate. What's the key factor that makes a real estate project impactful to you?
Mixed income housing, mixed use. Well, the actual specifics, mixed income housing and mixed use economic developments. But I think the real vision is talent retention in low status communities.
Okay. And then do you think that crowdfunding you touched on crowdfunding. Do you think it might impact real estate developers in more ways than just raising money?
So would it impact real estate developers?
Well, or neighborhoods or anything. What?
Yes. No, I think that you couple the idea of putting your cash into something that you believe in that is actually going to support your community creates a level of ownership that you can't buy that. You just can't. It sets up a foundation and roots in ways that I think a lot of folks wouldn't know what else to deal with. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right. So, and then this is a really hard one. If you were going to change one thing to make real estate development better in the U.S., what would it be?
Oh, just one.
Blow up all the Walmarts. No, I'm just joking.
You know what? Honestly, I really would go back to, it's very practical, creating a fund and education platform specifically for people in low status communities to either retain their properties or purchase them.
Like a land bank.
Mm-hmm. And it's not necessarily a community land trust, although that could certainly be, a byproduct or a result of it. Absolutely. But I think ultimately right now, we just have to stop the bleeding. I just think about my own neighborhood, whereas I think within the past 10 years, like our local home ownership rate has gone down from like 20% down to less than 7%.
Oh, why? Why did that happen?
Because predatory speculators,
foreclosures.
Yeah.
That's really bad.
Yep, exactly.
Well, on that sad note, I'm going to say thank you very much for talking to me. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I really hope we'll continue talking.
Cool. I hope so. Yes.
That was Majora Carter. I'm in awe. Majora is uncompromising about her mission. She lives and works in Hunts Point in the South Bronx, one of America's lowest status communities, just 2 blocks from the house she grew up in. And Majora is undaunted by taking new and necessary steps. When it became clear that no coffee shop operator wanted to operate out of her space in the neighborhood, she created her own business to achieve her goal. She's committed to further developing the neighborhood where she lives and has now set her sights on the conversion of a former railway station into a food hall. She lives in a brownstone, 2 blocks from the one she grew up in. Now that is putting your money where your mouth is. You can find out more about impact real estate investing and access the show notes for today's episode at my website, evepicker.com. While you're there, sign up for my newsletter to find out more about how to make money in real estate while building better cities. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. And thank you, Majora, for sharing your thoughts. We'll talk again soon, but for now, this is Eve Picker signing off to go make some change.